So you just got your vehicle ceramic coated with daily driven detail. And now you're wondering, how do I wash this thing? How do I maintain it? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to do a typical maintenance wash on your vehicle to make sure that you're washing it the safest way and also making sure that the coatings last as long as possible. So you should have already received one of these packets when you picked your vehicle up after getting it ceramic coated. And if you look through the packet, you'll notice the main thing when it comes to protecting and keeping your vehicle clean after it's ceramic coated is obviously routine maintenance using gentle microfiber wash materials and also just hand washing it in the gentlest possible way. So when it comes to washing your car properly, first thing you're going to want to keep in mind is we're always going to be doing wheels first. The reason we're doing wheels first is just because it's the dirtiest part of the car. You want to get that clean before you do anything with touching the paint to ensure that you're not getting splatter of brake dust or anything on the paint that could cause scratches in the surface. So main thing with wheels, I'm going to kind of run you through the products that we have here. First one's going to be our wheel cleaner. You'll notice I put the wheel cleaner that we use in the packet. This is Detail Studio Magnum. I just have it in a foam cannon, undiluted. You can dilute it in a spray bottle as well. Either one works. The next one we have, this is going to be our Easy Detail wheel brush. So this is going to be used for cleaning the spokes, but also cleaning the barrels and being able to get deep inside the wheel to make sure that you're really cleaning every inch of the wheel. Next one, and this one you don't really need to have, but it is nice to have as well, is just going to be a typical wheel face brush. Obviously this one's been through some use, so it's obviously a little worn, but you can find these on Amazon. It's just a soft bristle wheel face brush. And if you have wheels that have a lot of surface area on the face of them and not a lot of open area, this is going to be a really big help. The last two things we're going to use here are going to be our detail brush and also our tire brush as well. Tire brush is going to be cleaning the tires, so obviously your rubber tires, they kind of get a bunch of dirt on there, so you want to be able to scrub that off. So this is a very hard bristle brush, you'll notice. And then just pretty much any typical detail brush, you can find these on Amazon. You can get nicer ones as well, but if you're using your wheels, this thing's going to get pretty messed up pretty quick, so don't need anything too crazy for them. So when you're cleaning your wheels, it's pretty simple. First step, we're going to take either our pressure washer or our garden hose, and we're just going to go ahead and rinse in the fender liner as well. If you have carpet fender liners, you're going to want to make sure that you're really rinsing these out because they're going to hold a lot of dirt. But in this case, they're just plastic, so we're going to rinse out our fender liners, and we're going to rinse down just pretty much the whole wheel, get any of this loose brake dust off of the surface. So now that we rinsed off the wheel, you can tell that it already looks a lot cleaner than it did before. And part of that is because these wheels are ceramic coated as well. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our wheel cleaner. Like I said, you can have this in a foam cannon or spray bottle, doesn't matter. We're gonna spray the whole wheel, including the barrels deep inside here, and the tires as well, because we are gonna be cleaning the tires. So now that we have our wheel cleaner on the actual wheel, first thing I like to do is I like to take the Easy Detail brush that I showed you earlier, and I like to use this to kind of just get around the spokes. The reason being is because it has all these bristles, so it's really good at kind of getting in the tighter areas of the wheel. So you'll notice I'll just kind of go around here, and I'll use this just to get in all of the tiny little cracks and crevices here. And then now that I use that on all the spokes, I'm also going to use the same brush to get deeper within the barrels of the wheels. And the nice part about this brush is because it's just a bunch of bristles on just kind of like a wire centerpiece, it's super thin. So even if you have big brake calipers like on this M4, it's going to really be able to get behind the brake calipers and clean pretty much every inch of the wheel. And then once I'm done using the barrels, I'll also go ahead and use the same exact brush just to kind of get in the fender liner here a little bit and clean up this area just to get any sticky grime or any weird stuff off of there as well. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the wheel face brush that I showed earlier. Another solution to this is you can also just use just a basic microfiber towel as well. It's nothing crazy. You don't have to go super in depth with this. Like I said, this brush is going to be a lot more helpful on wheels that have more surface area of the face. You can tell that this wheel is mainly just spokes. So there's really not much use for this brush on this design of wheel. But if you had a wheel that was a little bit flatter on the front, it might be a little bit more helpful. And then I'm gonna take my tire brush and I'm just gonna go around and kind of scrub the tires here just to get any dirt or old tire dressing off of the surface. And then last but not least, I'm gonna take the detail brush that I have as well, and I'll just go ahead in here and kind of clean out the lug holes. Sometimes you might want to use this brush in your spokes as well, but since these spokes are pretty open, I was able to get most of it with this brush, and I don't really need to use this one on the spokes at all. So now that the wheel is fully brushed off and everything's completely clean, obviously we want to rinse all the soap off. So same thing as we did before, I'm going to rinse the fender liner first and then rinse down the entire wheel. So now we're moving on. Once you did that to all 4 wheels, then you can move on to washing the actual car. Main things you're really gonna need for this while you're washing it is obviously your pressure washer or your garden hose. Doesn't really matter once again. And then you're gonna wanna have 2 buckets like this. One of these buckets is going to be with soap and water with your car shampoo. Again, pH neutral car shampoo. If you look at your packet, you will see a great recommendation. It's a McGuire soap that we use. So just a bucket with water and obviously your pH neutral car shampoo. And then you're gonna have 1 bucket, which is just clean water. This is gonna be your rinse bucket. In your wash bucket, you're gonna wanna have your wash mitt of choice. So the one that we recommend is obviously the Rag Company. They make a wash mitt and they make a wash pad. Whatever you prefer, the mitt just has a little hole. So you can stick your hand in there and use it that way if you want. When you start to wash your car, the first thing you're gonna wanna do is obviously rinse the car first. This is to get any loose dirt, debris, road salt, whatever it is that's on the surface. We obviously wanna rinse that stuff off first before we even come close to touching the vehicle with our wash mitt. So when it comes to rinsing, it's fairly simple. Obviously you wanna start top to the bottom because the bottom is going to be the dirtiest. So you pretty much just wanna rinse all of the dirt from the top all the way down to the bottom so that you're pushing it off the car and not just pushing it around on the paint. So you'll notice I'll start with the roof here. And then I'm going to obviously move over to the windshield. And this doesn't really matter what order you go in. You could do, the roof, the hood, the windshield, and then you can just kind of work your way around the car, starting on this driver's side. Whatever works easiest for you. I usually will do the roof and the hood, and then I'll come around to the front bumper to rinse that down as well. And then just kind of go around the car and rinse the entire vehicle. And then the first thing you'll notice when you are rinsing your vehicle is obviously you'll notice the ceramic coating working. So this vehicle was coated, I believe around 1.5 years ago, and you can obviously still see that the coating is holding up very well. In areas where it looks like it's not performing to the best of its ability, obviously that's just due to the car was seeing a lot of road salt recently. So that stuff is gonna kind of clog up the coating. But once we go ahead and actually wash the vehicle, then you'll notice that water behavior kind of comes back to life. But even right now, you can see on our initial pre-rinse, the water beating and just kind of falling right off the surface. And those are the results that you can expect with your ceramic coating. And then obviously if the vehicle was super dirty or if it was sitting under a tree or anything like that, and stuff might have fallen on the vehicle, another thing you want to do when you're rinsing is rinse out some of the cracks and crevices. For example, this is one on this car that I'll always get down here, just because a lot of dirt and debris can kind of get stuck in between this crack here. Or like I said, if you parked under a tree, you can sometimes have dirt that likes to gather in this window seal here. So what I'll usually do in that scenario is just take, again, your pressure washer and just go kind of down along the window seal just to get all that stuff out. That way you're kind of rinsing with intention and you're getting all of that dirt off the car before we ever touch it. So the next step that we're gonna do here, if you are using a pressure washer and you have a foam cannon, this is what we're gonna do next. So this isn't a required step by any means. What this is gonna do is it's gonna put a layer of soap on the surface of the vehicle, which is gonna provide a form of lubrication so that when you are rubbing on the vehicle with your wet microfiber wash mitt, you're not gonna be putting in any sort of additional friction, which is gonna help prevent scratches as well over time. So if you have a pressure washer and you have a foam cannon, this is gonna be your next step. If you're just using a garden hose and you don't have a foam cannon, it's something that you can get in the future, but it is not necessary by any means. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the foam cannon here, and I'm just gonna obviously shake up the soap mixture that I have in the foam cannon. And I'm just gonna go ahead, same thing, and kind of apply a nice layer to it. Now, when you're doing this, I like to kind of overlap where I'm spraying the soap as well, just so that way I can really make sure that I'm kind of getting the most amount of coverage possible. So if you've ever used like a spray paint can or anything like that, very similar. You kind of want to just overlap the soap on the surface and just get a nice thick layer on the surface of the vehicle, so that again, we have proper lubrication when we go to actually touch the vehicle as well. Okay, so now that we have the soap on the car, now we're ready to actually go in with our contact wash. So again, we have your two buckets. We have our soap bucket here and our rinse bucket here. I'm gonna take the wash mitt out of my soap bucket, and I'm just gonna start on the roof here. And when you're doing this, main thing is that you really don't need to use a lot of pressure. So I'll do that roof panel. I'll also just do the back and the front glass as well, just because you don't really have to worry about contamination when you're doing that, because glass is not going to scratch just with doing this. So I will do the roof, and then I'll do these glass panels. And same thing as you do when you're rinsing, you want to go from top to bottom. And the reason that is obviously, like I said, the bottom of the car is going to be the dirtiest. So you don't want to wash the bottom first, pick up a bunch of junk in your wash mitt, and then bring that back to the top of the car, because that's when you can start to introduce scratching into the surface of the vehicle. So again, top to bottom, I did the roof. I'm going to flip my wash mitt over, and then I'm going to go ahead and do this half of the hood as well. And again, like I said, you don't need a lot of pressure. You're really just kind of gliding the wash mitt over the surface. Once you've done one panel with either side of your wash mitt, that's when you're going to want to take it into your rinse bucket, fully rinse it out. I like to squeeze it out as well. And then that's when you can go back into your wash bucket and continue with the other panels of the vehicle. So again, you'll notice top to bottom, I'm going to do this fender. Now this fender is clean. I'm going to flip my wash mitt, and I'm going to move on to this whole door area. So I'll do the A pillar up there. I'll also do the mirror here, and then I'll work my way on the door. And another thing you don't want to do is go in any sort of circular motions. So you obviously want to keep it for one panel per side of your wash mitt, and you're just gently gliding it across the surface and going in straight line motion all the way from the top to the bottom. You do this, same thing, doesn't really matter what order you go in, but just make sure you're doing it top to bottom on every panel. Go around the vehicle and do pretty much every square inch of the surface of your paint. Another thing to note as well is that if you are washing in the sun like we are today, for example, I washed that side first and now I'm moving over to this side, which is more shaded. It might be worth it to take a little pause in between, take your garden hose, your pressure washer, and just kind of rinse that side off just to keep it wet, so that you don't run into any issues with water spots if you have hard water at your house, and just to avoid any sort of issues that could come up just washing in the sun. Okay, so now that your vehicle is fully cleaned, you went around, you contact washed every single panel on the vehicle. Now it's time to obviously rinse it back off. So same thing when we're rinsing. Obviously we're gonna go top to bottom. We're gonna try to push all the soap off the vehicle. Another thing, like I said, when we're doing the pre-rinse, if you were to try to remove anything from cracks and crevices, you wanna keep that same idea when you're rinsing it down after you wash it. Obviously there's gonna be soap in all these body lines and things like that. So you wanna use your pressure washer to be able to fully kind of push all that soap out of those different panel gaps and cracks and crevices, just to make sure that you're fully rinsing the vehicle off and you don't leave any soap residue on the car. We're gonna start, obviously, same story, rinsing the top of the vehicle. And then same thing, I'm just gonna work my way around the car, rinsing from top to bottom. I'll give the wheels a rinse again since they might have gotten some soap on them when we use the foam cannon. A little trick, some cars you can do this, some cars you can't. But if you put your mirror like that, it helps water and soap drain out. So when you're drying the car, it's gonna make your life a little bit easier as well. And then like I said before, you're gonna see a bunch of soap kind of in this window gap here. So I'll just take my pressure washer and rinse against that just to push all that stuff out. And then just continue going down the rest of the vehicle, like so. Another example of obviously rinsing out, using your rinsing with intention is obviously the gas door as well is another thing you want to do. So rinse out the gas door as well, just so you don't have soap residue kind of running down the car while you're drying it. And then same thing, just going top to bottom. So now that we're done with washing the vehicle and that all of the soap is fully rinsed off, now we're gonna move on to our drying process. Now, when you're washing your vehicle, drying is going to be the #1 cause of imperfections or scratches in the paint of the vehicle. So ideally, we would like to dry the vehicle with air completely first before we're touching any sort of towel to the surface. Now, however, if you are washing like we are here today in direct sunlight, that you also want to make sure that you're avoiding water spots as well. So instead of maybe using an air blower to blow off the entirety of the vehicle if you're washing in the sun, I would maybe just go over it with a really quality microfiber drying towel. Something like an auto fiber dreadnought's gonna be a really good choice, just to get the majority of the water off so that you don't have to worry about it drying on the surface. And then from there, you can go in and use your blower to get all the water out of the cracks and crevices and whatnot to make sure that you're fully drying the entire vehicle. So in this case, we pulled the vehicle inside, now it's time to dry it. The first thing I'm gonna do to dry the vehicle is, because this car is ceramic coated, I can pretty much dry about 95% of it just using air. So you can use an air blower like this. This is the Blow handheld device. They also make one that's on wheels with a little hose that you can kind of drag around. Or you can also just use any sort of leaf blower. So whether it's a Milwaukee, I know the Egos are a very big popular brand in the car detailing community for drying cars. Any sort of air blower to get the water off the surface and also to get it out of any sort of cracks and crevices on the car. Same exact thing, you'll notice all the principles are the exact same. So I'm just gonna go over here and use the blower starting from top to bottom. I'm gonna blow around that antenna and then I'm just gonna get all the water pushed off of the surface. Same thing when we're rinsing, obviously you wanna blow out the cracks like your windshield crevice here, just to get any standing water out of there. And then we're also gonna go ahead and just blow off the windshield. And move on to the hood. And this is where you can really see the ceramic coating working to its fullest, just with how the water is falling right off of it. So if you look at that, you can see it's just all falling right off. And then when I'm done with this hood, you'll notice this whole hood pretty much completely dry just using the air. So that really goes to show how much easier it really is to wash and to dry your car when it is ceramic coated, because you can tell just a couple seconds using the air blower and this hood is pretty much completely dry. So now, same thing, you're gonna stay moving from top to bottom and you're just gonna go around the entire car and just rinse off there, or just blow off all the water on there. Okay, so now that we use the air to dry off the majority of the vehicle, now we're gonna go ahead and take any other sort of leftover water off of the surface by physically drying the car. Now, like I said, drying is where the majority of scratches or imperfections will go into your paint. So we wanna make sure that we're being very careful with this process. So how we're gonna do this is we have 2 towels here. This is just a normal twisted loop microfiber. This is gonna be something very similar to your auto fiber dreadnought or your dreadnought junior towel. These I just got off Amazon as well, but anything twisted loop, small like this is going to be great. And then the second towel I have here as well is another auto fiber towel. This is actually a coating leveling towel, but I like to use this just to buff off any sort of other residues or anything that the drying aid might put onto the surface. This is just going to allow us to get the streak-free finish and make sure that the paint looks as good as possible. Now, when it comes to the drying aid we're going to be using P&S paint gloss. Now, this is just a very basic quick detailer spray. There's no sort of weird ceramic toppings or ceramic sealants in the product, which I really like, because when we're doing this, we don't really want something like that to be on the, in the drying aid. Even though adding some kind of ceramic sealant can help with, adding just an extra layer to the coating and kind of protecting the vehicle even more. When we're doing just a typical weekly wash, we don't necessarily want that because some of those ceramic sealants can streak up the vehicle and just make drying it a little bit more time consuming and a little bit more tricky. So we're gonna take our P&S paint gloss that we have just in a normal spray bottle. And how we're gonna do this is I'm just gonna go ahead and spray down the panel. And you don't need a lot of this. Another reason why I like the paint gloss instead of using some kind of ceramic sealant is because we can also use this on glass. If you were to use some kind of ceramic sealant on the glass of your vehicle, again, it could just add streaks that are gonna be a little bit harder to remove. Whereas if we're using something like this, we're not gonna necessarily have to worry about that. And then it also saves us time as well because we're not gonna have to use some kind of dedicated glass cleaner on the exterior windows. So you saw, I just kind of sprayed off a lot of the vehicle with this, with the quick detail and the drying aid that we're using. And I'm gonna take my first towel, which is the twisted loop one. And again, I'm just gonna go over the surface of the car. Now, I'm not using a lot of pressure on this, obviously, because like I said, drying is where the majority of the scratches will come from. So I'm just going very light pressure over this, and I'm just gonna dry off any surface that I sprayed with the drying aid. So you see, I just did this half of the roof. I'm gonna do this windshield as well. And then I'm gonna move my way down to the hood here. And then another thing that's nice about doing this part of the process is if you were washing it outside, or if you did get any sort of water spots on the vehicle from, obviously washing it in the sun or whatever the case might be, this is also where you're gonna be able to remove those water spots because obviously the quick detail is gonna get the surface wet again, and then you'll be able to just kind of wipe those right off. So like I said, just kind of going around with the twisted loop towel here. And you'll notice I'm not going right away with the other towel quite yet. I'm gonna wipe everything that I sprayed first with this, and then I'm gonna go back and buff off the residues. And the reason why I like to wipe everything first is because then it kind of gives the drying aid some time to kind of fully dry out, so that when I do go in with the buffing towel, which should technically stay dry throughout the whole process, I'm not going to be adding any sort of streaks into the paint after we're drying. So. And then now that we wiped everything off with our first initial towel, then we're going to go ahead and take the second one that I was showing you earlier. And again, you're not using a lot of pressure. You're just kind of buffing any sort of residues or streak marks off of the surface, especially on your glass, obviously, because glass is going to kind of streak the easiest. So you're just gonna go over everything that you wiped first already. Like I said, this should already be completely dry just because you wiped it with that first towel. But when we're doing this, this is pretty much just to remove any sort of streaks that the drying aid could put in, even though I said because it's not some sort of ceramic sealant, it's not really gonna add streaks. There's always still a chance anytime you're using a product that it could streak. especially if you're, wiping off water at the same time. So that's why I like to take this second towel and just kind of buff everything to get a nice looking finish to it. All right, so now that we went ahead and kind of fully dried off the rest of the vehicle, got all the water off the surface, obviously we want to clean up the little stuff. So door jambs, your wheels, even though we hit them with the blow dryer when we were drying the car, obviously, like I said, still want to get any sort of remaining water that might be left over. So in that case, what you can do, you don't need anything fancy. These are just, the big pack of yellow microfibers from Costco. Usually you don't want to use these on the paint of your vehicle just because of the blend and the microfibers could scratch the paint a little bit easier than the towels that I showed you. But for something like wheels and door jambs, this is totally fine to use. So what I'll do is I'll just take one of these towels, and then for example, on the door jambs, I'll usually do door jambs first just because I like to use the same towel. So I'll go ahead and just take this towel and obviously just wipe off the rest of the door jamb. What this is going to do is obviously not only get rid of any sort of water streaks or water spots in your door jambs, but also when you get to like this section here by the front, it's going to pick up any water that might drip out onto the side and cause water drips as you start to drive. Water drips are, you can try to avoid them, but at the end of the day, they're only so avoidable. So you might still have some here and there, especially if you're driving the car right after washing it. So maybe wash the car before you put it away in your garage or whatever the scenario might be. But pretty much just do this for all the door jambs, trunk included. I'll always dry the trunk jamb as well. And then once you're done drying off all your door jambs, that's when you can go ahead and do the wheels, which I'll show you in a second. All right, so then now after you're done your door jambs, coming down to the wheels, same thing. The wheels are already clean, so really your only objective here is just getting any sort of standing water. So just kind of go through here really quickly, get any sort of water. That looks good to me. Move on to the next wheel, same exact thing. And then you'll just go ahead and do this for pretty much all 4 wheels just to get any sort of standing water off and make sure that you're not leaving water spots on the wheels as well.